everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I'm excited to welcome Lauren to the show. Lauren is a retired computer technician who spent the bulk of her career at IBM, where she eventually transitioned. She was transgender in an era where that word didn't exist, and there was little to no information about it to be found. It wasn't until the advent of the internet that she was able to finally find information about being trans and find community with similar experience. Now at 71, after 26 years of HRT and 25 total years of transition, she's looking back on a life well lived. I want everybody to welcome to the show, Lauren.
Howdy, howdy.
Let's start off with, for the record, how do you identify?
With she, her.
For the title you use to describe yourself, you've said you've been in transition for 25 years. Does transgender still fall into your vocabulary of how you describe yourself, or have you gotten to the point where you just identify as a woman?
I think, for every day, it's as a woman. Because I basically went stealth after I transitioned. And I didn't tell anybody. I tried to hide the history, and I tried to kind of forget that part of the past so that it couldn't be found. And and I was kind of successful at it, but that had another downside to it, in that I kind of lost the sense of community with the transgender community. And when it came time when I kind of needed the community, I didn't know where to find it. But then I found out that, holy smokes, things have exploded since I transitioned.
Yeah, isn't it wonderful? There are so many, companies like the Transverse, like what we're doing. There are tons of resources, Discord servers, Reddit's huge. A lot of people find a lot of their information there. There's a lot of good places, and that's wonderful to see. That finally there is information out there. If you want to look, you can find it in seconds, not years, like it was for you. Let's jump into your story. How did you choose your name?
This one is going to be interesting. When I was looking for a name and stuff, I know that my parents had thought about Veronica or Ronnie, and I thought about that. It was, I don't know, it just seemed not right for me. And I had a young woman who sat behind me in high school, and her name was Lauren. And Lauren, every time I turned around, she would reach up to her bra strap and bounce it up and down. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of cute. So I picked Lauren as well as Veronica, and we kind of voted on it at a Magic support meeting, which was a transgender support group in the Washington, D.C. area. And we were all at dinner, and Lauren actually won. But the neat thing about this is that later on, like maybe 10 years later, my mom was going through some things that were my dad's, and one of them was a journal that my grandfather had, and I never got to meet my grandfather. And in the journal, he had written down the names for my dad, who I was named after. And it turns out that if he had been born a girl, he would have been named Lauren. Isn't that cool?
Wow, that is such a wonderful coincidence. How pretty.
Yeah.
When did you first realize you were trans? As I mentioned in the intro, you were going through this in an era where the information wasn't out there. So how did you start to kind of realize that there was something about you that was different?
It kind of began, I guess, as early as I can remember, like around 5, 6 years old, 7, somewhere in there. And I just kind of felt wrong. I felt like I should have been with the girls. and not with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to say that I couldn't do the guy thing, because I could, but I just felt softer somehow or another. I don't know how to explain it. And then at nighttime, I would think about being magically, magically switched. And it felt right. It wasn't some sort of a switch that came on. It just was sort of an idea that I'm not fitting in exactly with these guys.
And you mentioned in the pre-interview that you went to the library and looked for some information, and you found a book or two on some trans women, I believe. Is that correct?
Christine Jorgensen, I think it is. And I think that's the only thing that I could find. I mean, libraries weren't full of anything that said trans in it. Um, and the apparently there was this, and I don't know the history. You'll have to forgive me for that. But there was a trans woman who was born in, I believe, the 30s or the 40s, and did undergo, the change and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have no idea what they did surgically and all that business, but that's all I could find. And so, according to my brain, it was her and me in the whole world, you know. And I had no idea that there was, other people like myself out there
Mm-hmm.
at all.
And for timeline understanding here, what was the time between finding that information and believing that you were one of a small handful of trans people in the world, and finding the internet information and actually kind of starting to dive in?
Oh God, years. That would have been, let's see, probably 26 years. In the meantime, I got married to a wonderful woman. We had 3 children, 3 beautiful young men, who I'm super duper proud of. And don't get me talking, or I'll start talking about them the whole time. Uh, but but anyhow, yeah. So it during the marriage, I think we talked about this before. Things started off pretty good. We had a pretty good marriage, but as time went on, our roles became reversed,
Mm-hmm.
and she became the dad, I became the mom, kind of.
And
Um,
and what sort of brought that on? Like, what um, facilitated that shift, do you think, at that time? Was it just purely your internal identity that you was finally starting to come out because you had comfort in that, or was there something else
yeah,
going on?
it was easy for, she was extremely shy and so forth, and it was easy for me to be dominant, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And as she changed, and became more confident in herself, um, I kind of took a back seat slowly, and things just shifted around. She ended up being the disciplinarian. I became the hugger. And I don't know. It just changed, in ways that wasn't satisfying for her, and for me, it probably was not satisfying either.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of lost touch with each other, and at that point, I started looking around, which you and I talked about, on the internet, which was in its infancy,
Yeah.
and I found AOL and chat rooms, and there was I'd happened to put in transsexual into the search bar, and all of a sudden I realized I'm not alone. There's tons of people that are like me, and I started thinking about things, and I knew that we were in an unhealthy relationship. I
Yeah.
knew that she was not going to be happy the rest of her life, and I was not going to be happy the rest of our lives. So at that point, I decided that I needed to talk to her about things, and so I did.
Hmm. How did you kind of come to grips with the fact that you're trans? Like you've been seeking this information, you find it, and it's what you had hoped for or thought you would find. It was exactly explaining what you were going through. How did you kind of how did you come to terms with being trans and then approach that conversation with your wife?
Well, at that point, she just knew that, something was wrong with me and I was going to therapy.
Mm,
And of course, talking to the therapist, and actually I was his first transgender person. And being a transgender therapist back in those days was, not a thing.
hmm.
Uh, you couldn't really find it, or at least I didn't. And in talking to the therapist, it was decided that, I need to talk to her about it. And so I sat down with her and we talked about it. And in the end, it was, decided that, like I said, that we would both be happier, splitting at that point.
Hmm.
And of course, it was extremely important that the kids not gets have any kind of suffering at all,
Hmm.
because I had terrible guilt,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was the reason that everybody was going through such a hard time, and really it's kind of not my fault. I mean, I was born that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation for everybody, when you come to the realization after you've already gotten into the situation, I don't know, it's something that a lot of us deal with. I think most of the people I've interviewed have been in relationships when they found out, and unfortunately, a lot of times they don't make it past this because of the expectations going into the relationship, and when you change a major part of it, it's hard for some people to hang with it.
But the good thing was, though, my wife went to therapy with me,
Hmm.
and um, she understood what was going on, and that this was not a choice; it was a real problem and stuff. And between the two of us, quite um, we decided that we were going to do the best we could with our kids,
Hmm.
and we co-parented them successfully. I think at least they've grown into three great young men,
Hmm.
and so I may have lost the love of my life, but I ended up keeping my best friend, so that was nice.
What were some of the things that you learned in doing that, in navigating this? Because you said that she accepted it and, was on board with the idea that this is something that wasn't a choice, it was who you really were. In an era where that information still wasn't out, for cis people to find, was showing her through the message boards that you were on how you kind of got that idea across, or was there some other way where that helped her to accept that?
It was mostly therapy. The therapist,
Huh.
he did an excellent job. Um, he was good in explaining, that um, I guess even though he wasn't a transgender therapist and had never had one, to experience before, he must have done his homework at least at some point.
Yeah.
And it was explained to her, and we both read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And that's when she got done with the book, she looked at me and she said, "We've had a role reversal." And I said, "Yeah, sure have." Having the priority of our children, and you know, just the fact that the two of us still loved each other, you know, um, then it was the only way forward was to be in unison with each other as far as staying friends, and
Yeah.
so forth.
What were the biggest challenges you ran into once you came out and once you were living as yourself, out in a public that again didn't know what transgender was?
Well, the one good thing that I had was I had my friend Kristen, who I had met in the chat group, and she had transitioned the year before me at NASA. She really was, kind of my mentor and helped me out with telling me all of the things that, she had gone through. Me, I was going to work as a guy and coming home at night, and, switching and trying to get used to being transitioned to female. I would go to like 7-Elevens and I'd sit in the parking lot and just sort of wait until maybe it was, not that many people inside. Basically, it kind of looked like I was casing the place to rob it. Um, so basically, it was just, just kind of living a half life like that during that time period. Um, it it's terrible scary. You know that, I know that. The people that are going through this now know that. And one of the reasons that I do the moderation that I do in our Discord server is I want these people to know that after all that crap that goes on, all that worry and scary time, you can have a life after that, and life can be normal,
Hmm.
and or as normal as I am.
So what was it that took you from living the dual life to living full time as you?
Work. Um, at that point, with that half on and half off, um, the one major point that was left was telling work. And I was scared because I was pretty sure I was going to lose my job. And by losing my job, I would lose um, the support, for my family, and not only my family but for myself. And it was horrible. It was just horrible, and the pressure just kept building and building and building. And you get that push, that sort of push that just keeps you moving forward. And it got to a breaking point one day, and I had been at a service call for IBM, and I had gotten to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and I got out of the service call, and here I am in a suit and tie, and um, and I just know things are wrong, and I got into the car, and I probably should not have been driving, and I was in a bad state, and I floored the car. Thank God it was a neon and couldn't go all that fast. And I took a run at a bridge abutment. And before I came to the bridge abutment, I thought about my kids. And that thought of my kids, it saved me. I'm sorry. And I stopped and I pulled over to the side of the road, and I typed into the little text machine that we use to communicate back and forth with each other at IBM. And I said, I just can't take it anymore. And I went on for, I guess, another couple of paragraphs of just, being so fed up and so forth, but not explaining what was going on.
Hmm.
And my boss came on and he said, go home. When you get home, give me a call. So I did, and I got to the apartment, And I called him, and that was the moment. And it was either, it was do or die at that point.
Yeah.
And so I told him, I said, Bill, I am going to um, change my sex to female. And that there was that little pause. And then he says, well, the company and I will support you 100%. And I went, oh my God, I'm going to make it.
Wow.
And it was, I got goosebumps again.
That's really impressive,
And
especially, and this was about 1996, right? Somewhere around there.
this was 96, yeah. Yeah. And we got into a plan, and IBM was fantastic. They had diversity training beforehand. Basically, I came to work for a month until they got things straightened out, and I went to training out in Boulder, Colorado, as well.
Hmm.
And then when I came back for a week, they did the diversity training, and then I came back to work as Lauren, and they took me around to all my big customers, Bank of America. Thank you, Bank of America, for supporting me. Um, and they were just fantastic. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything better. All of my accounts that I had, all of the accounts said that they wanted to keep me as their service rep, and I had no cancellations. One funny story that I told you about was that one of my first service calls as myself was a place that I had been to 2 weeks beforehand. It was B&O Railroad, I think it was. And in walking into the place, I thought to myself, oh God, this lady's going to recognize me. I know it. I'm going to get busted. I'm going to get clocked first time. And so I go walking in there, and she goes, some guy was here 2 weeks ago. I'm going, yes.
Ah, such a triumph to pass that quickly like that. That's wonderful.
I still don't understand how it happened, but it did. I remember going to Bank of America site, and the woman there, I sat down with her and with my manager, and she looked over at me and she goes, I'm pretty nervous. And I said, me too.
Ah, wonderful icebreaker there. Just like, yeah, we're on the same page. We can do
Yeah.
this. How did your coming out conversations go at that point? Who did you have on your list to come out to, and how did you approach those?
I did have a best friend, and this one kind of hurt. He was pretty, I guess, I'm not going to say right wing, but he was very conservative. And for years and years, he was, the neighbor who always popped up. We played games together. We played tennis together. Um, did a lot of things together. When my dad passed away, he came with me to help out. But when I said that I was gender, um, he said to me on the phone that from now on we'll just have to be phone friends, and that was the last time I talked to him. He's remained friends with my ex, which is fine, but it still it hurt. It hurt bad.
Hmm.
At that point, he was about maybe I mean, other than neighbors and stuff like that, I didn't have anybody else that I was really hanging around
Okay.
um, than him.
Hmm.
So I didn't have a large group of friends to come out to. At that point, I started trying to find friends, trying to find a group that would allow me to have a new life, so to speak. And I tried to fit into several communities, and just never sort of fit anywhere. And I just kind of melted into the fabric of society at that point.
Hmm. So when was it that you were able to find community that you identified with? I know you mentioned that you're a mod on the Trans Community Center server, correct?
On Ashley Adamson's
Hmm.
server.
Oh, Ashley
Uh,
Adamson. Oh, wrong Ashley. Okay.
yep,
Um, Ashley Adamson server. So,
yep.
you know, was that sort of one of the first communities that you found all these years later to belong to? And, kind of, I'm assuming you're able to kind of help and advise people with the experience that you have.
Like I said, I went stealth for a long time, and I kind of hit a bump in the road, and it was, after, all sitting around by myself for the entire pandemic, and, it was just, a horrible time for everybody. But I remember I was going out to go flying because I fly um, radio control long range drones and stuff, airplanes. And so I was going up to Gettysburg to go flying with a friend. And it was a beautiful day. And I was looking around and thinking, oh, God, life is great. We're all back again. And I started taking selfies. That was a big mistake. I have not taken selfies ever, really, And I took the selfie and I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I see him. And I see him bad.
Mhm.
And I had the biggest, probably the worst dysphoria I think I've ever had at that point. And that's when I started going around searching. Um, and I started looking at YouTube channels and trying to find different things, and I was like floored with the fact of all the different uh, changes that had happened during that time. And I happened to come across Ashley, and I don't know if you've watched any of her videos and stuff, but she talks, a lot about deep things. And one of the things she was talking about was if it doesn't feel right, then do something about it. Be a warrior. Go, if you need to make a change, go make that change. So that really resonated with me, and I ended up going and getting some work done, let's say,
Mhm.
on my face. I can never say that word. FFS, but I call it FFS light because all I did was the fillers and so
Okay.
forth. And it made a huge difference, in my life. Because I was telling Ashley, I said, um, how in the hell do I remunerate someone who has given me a sense of joy, for what's probably going to be the rest of my life? And so the one way to do that would be to give her a hand. So I've been giving her a hand with the server so that she can uh, go do her work and so forth.
Oh, that's amazing. So you're the head mod then for her server?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, it's so great for her to have somebody that's pretty tech savvy to be able to take that role.
Well, I knew nothing about Discord when
Hmm.
I first came on there. I had my own server for playing flying games with my best friend, and that was it. So the I uh, got to Ashley's server, and I signed up for her Patreon, and she mentioned that she was looking for somebody to be a mod so that could take care of the place while she's sleeping because she's in Berlin,
Uh-huh.
and and me being in the East Coast of the U.S., it kind of works out pretty good. With the Discord, she asked me, she said, well, we need to make it so that we can verify people coming in so they read the rules and stuff. And I'm going, how do I do that? So get on YouTube and go try to figure out how the server work, and it seems to be working so far.
You mentioned that you've done FFS Lite. Is that as deep as you've dipped a toe into surgery for your transition?
No, I got the BA boob job.
Okay.
Did that. I have not done bottom surgery or anything. I still am kind of on the fence with some stuff. Most of it was because at the time I didn't really have the money, to do anything. And the health insurance at IBM, although they were great for everything else, the health insurance wasn't going to pay for me.
Hmm.
Um, and so so I went out of pocket for the boobs, and that was basically it. Well, I know Ashley's talked to me about it with her situation also is, she doesn't know if she wants to exactly, but with the situation in Germany, you have to, it's like a 2-year period,
Hmm.
before, I mean, if you get approved, it's like 2 years waiting time until you can actually do it. And so she's putting in, paperwork, but she doesn't know herself, if she wants to or not.
So is that an area that gives you an amount of dysphoria? Is it great? Is it minimal? Is that kind of why you've been able to, live with it and
I
still
would
have this
say,
decision?
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, oh my God, I got to now, I'm
Hmm.
probably at a 5.
Okay.
It's not a great amount of dysphoria because basically the boobs got so big I can't see down there anyhow. So
So the boob job took care of the bottom dysphoria. There you go. But, out of sight, out of mind. That's pretty wonderful. What is your favorite thing that you have learned through your transition?
one of the first things that I learned, um, and it's a small thing, but I would tell this to anybody who's just, getting ready to transition and is going out in public for the first time. Women smile at each other. Guys never smile at each other. So if you're out there and a woman goes past you and smiles at you, it's not because you're getting clocked. It's just a thing. Guys never do that. Watch a guy never walks past another guy and goes, no, doesn't happen. If you go past another woman, she'll look over at you and you'll get a quick, it happens all the time.
Hmm.
So I call it the secret handshake.
What advice do you have for young or closeted trans people out there?
Keep at it. Find your place. I know it's scary. I know it's terrible at times. I mean, being on the Discord server, I see people, just starting out, young people and so forth, and um, just keep at it and find your place. Try not to pull yourself down because I see so much of that, people looking at themselves and feeling like, oh, I'm just not worth it. The self-esteem in this community is horrible. I still get that myself, my self-esteem is not that great.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's true of all of us because we've kind of pushed ourselves into thinking that way. I'm not enough. You are enough. You can do it. You can go past the pain and you can become what your dreams have already told you you are. So go for it. Don't let things hold you back. Try not to get yourself stuck. It's easier than you think it is.
I love that. Yeah, give yourself the permission to
Yeah.
go after what you need. I love
Yeah.
it.